You ever wonder what the most unhinged thing an ex has done after being dumped looks like? Well, I'm living it. I've been holed up in my friend Janet's spare bedroom for the past 4 days, jumping every time I hear footsteps in the hallway. I keep the blinds closed around the clock and sleep with a kitchen knife tucked under my pillow. This isn't how my life was supposed to turn out. It all started 3 months ago, right after I ended my engagement to Owen. We'd been together for nearly 5 years, and honestly, the first 3 were great. But everything shifted after he proposed. It was like slipping that ring on my finger flipped a switch in his head. Suddenly, he acted like he owned me. The controlling habits began quietly at first, asking who I was texting, checking where I was, and blowing up if I didn't pick up his calls fast enough. Then it escalated. He started accusing me of hiding things, stalking my social media, and showing up at my job unannounced just to check in. Every time I tried to talk about how suffocating it felt, he'd twist my words until somehow I ended up apologizing. Classic manipulation. Gaslighting 101. I didn't see it clearly back then. I just thought he was being protective. But now I realize he was already crossing lines. I once woke up in the middle of the night and found him sitting beside me, scrolling through my phone at 3 a.m., his face lit by the screen, completely focused. When I confronted him, he told me he was only checking because he loved me too much to lose me. And, like a fool, I believed that. I thought obsession meant love. God, I was so blind. When I finally ended things, I was shocked at how calm he seemed. That should have been the first red flag. Owen never handled rejection well, but he just nodded, said he understood, and left without an argument. I remember thinking, wow, maybe this breakup won't be as ugly as I feared. For 2 whole weeks, nothing happened. No texts, no calls, no surprise visits. Just silence. I started breathing normally again, even went on a casual coffee date with a guy from work. That's when the texts started. At first, they seemed harmless. Hey, how are you? Or just checking in. Then came the old photos of us with captions like, remember how happy we were? And after that, screenshots of my coworker's Instagram with nothing but question marks. Then the phone calls started, dozens of them every single day. Sometimes he'd hang up the moment I answered. His voicemail swung from sad to furious to something worse. A calm, eerie certainty. You'll come back to me eventually, he said in the last one before I blocked him. We're meant to be together. I've never been more sure of anything. I blocked his number, his accounts, everything. But that didn't stop him. He started emailing me from random new addresses, so I blocked those too. Then he left handwritten notes on my car. I told my apartment manager, who promised to keep an eye out. I honestly thought I was staying on top of things. I wasn't. Last Friday, I came home early from work because of a migraine. The moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air felt heavier somehow. I almost turned around to leave, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I noticed my bedroom door was closed, which was weird because I always leave it open for airflow. The second I pushed it open, my stomach dropped. Hanging above my bed was my wedding dress. The same one I had returned to the boutique months ago. Only now it was nailed, literally nailed, to the wall. Not hung, not draped. Nailed. He had hammered framing nails straight through the delicate fabric, piercing the wall underneath. The dress was stretched out like a crucified body. The bodice ripped down the middle, as if he'd wanted to destroy it completely. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst was my bed. Someone had carved into the wooden headboard in jagged, violent letters. You belong to me. Forever and always. There were what I first thought were rose petals scattered across the sheets. Except they were black. Burned or dyed, I couldn't tell. They smeared dark marks on my white comforter, like bruises on skin. Some had been arranged in the shape of a heart around my pillow, and what looked like our engagement photo on my nightstand. It wasn't a photo. It was a photoshopped image of my face on a corpse. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. And that's when I felt him behind me. I hadn't heard a sound, but suddenly his hands were around my throat, squeezing so hard that black spots swam in front of my eyes. He shoved me onto the bed, onto those black petals, still strangling me. His voice was a low hiss against my ear. If I can't have you, no one will. You think you can just throw away 5 years? You think you can leave me? I'll always find you. I was seconds from passing out when my neighbor's dog started barking wildly in the hallway. That distraction made him loosen his grip just enough for me to free one hand. I always keep a small can of pepper spray in my pocket since the stalking began. By some miracle, it was still there. I grabbed it and sprayed him full in the face. He screamed, stumbled backward, clutching his eyes. I'll kill you, he shouted. You're dead! Do you hear me? Dead! I didn't wait to see what he did next. I ran. Didn't grab a purse, a phone charger, nothing. I sprinted down the stairs instead of waiting for the elevator, and I didn't stop until I was in my car. I drove straight to Janet's house, shaking so hard I could barely steer. I called the police from her phone. They came, took my statement, photographed the bruises on my neck, and went to check my apartment. Owen was gone. But everything else, the nailed-up dress, the carved headboard, the horrifying fake photo, was still there. They took pictures, filed an emergency restraining order, and promised to look for him. But restraining orders are just paper. Paper doesn't stop a man like Owen. They found his car abandoned near the bus station, but surveillance footage showed he never went inside. His parents claim they haven't seen him. His friends all swear they don't know where he is. So now, I'm hiding. I still jump every time my phone buzzes. Janet had to buy me clothes and toiletries because I'm too terrified to go back to my place. I've been wearing the same borrowed pajamas for days. Update. It's been 2 weeks since my last post. Thank you to everyone who sent messages and advice. Even the hard truths. After almost a week at Janet's, I finally forced myself to leave. She's been incredible, but I could tell her boyfriend was getting tired of me flinching at every sound and living in their guest room full time. Janet works from home, and she's had to whisper through client calls because I've been having panic attacks in the next room. It wasn't fair to her anymore. I owe Janet more than I can ever repay. She practically saved my life. The police still haven't found Owen. His credit cards are untouched. His phone's been dead since that night, and everyone close to him swears they have no idea where he is. Or at least, that's what they say. The detective assigned to my case, Hilda, looks like she hasn't had a full night's sleep in years. She told me they've been watching his parents' house and his best friend Brody's apartment hoping he might show up. But so far, nothing. No sightings, no leads. It's like he just disappeared into thin air. My parents drove down from Indiana the moment I finally told them what had happened. The look on my dad's face when he saw the bruises on my neck, yellowing and purple by then, was something I'll never forget. He wanted to kill Owen. My mom, on the other hand, just kept crying and asking why I hadn't said anything sooner about the way he'd been controlling me. The truth? I was embarrassed. I felt so stupid for not noticing the warning signs sooner. Part of me even blamed myself, like maybe I had pushed Owen too far, or caused him to snap. It's ridiculous now, but when you've been gaslit long enough, you start believing their narrative. My parents insisted I couldn't go back to that apartment, which, honestly, I already knew. The image of that carved headboard haunted me every time I tried to sleep. They wanted me to come back home to Indiana, start fresh there, away from all of this. But that would have meant quitting my job and leaving behind the life I'd built. I've worked so hard to stand on my own. I couldn't let Owen take that from me, too. So we compromised. They helped me find a new apartment across town, a secure building with key fob entry, security cameras, and a front desk guard. They even covered the deposit and first month's rent, no matter how much I protested. My dad said it was the only way he'd be able to sleep at night. We left my name off the mailbox. Officially, I'm subletting from the previous tenant, which means my address doesn't show up anywhere public. That anonymity gives me a small sliver of comfort. Moving was an ordeal of its own. The police finally released my old apartment as a crime scene, but there was no way I was going back alone. Janet came with me, and she brought her brother, this massive guy who looks like he could bench press a car, just to be safe. We showed up with black trash bags, ready to grab whatever I could stand to keep, but when I stepped inside, it all felt ruined, contaminated, like every inch of that space carried Owen's fingerprints. Not just physically, but emotionally, like the air itself was poisoned. I left most of it behind, the furniture, the decorations, even most of my clothes. It all felt like part of him. I only grabbed essentials, my laptop, some documents, a few pieces of clothing, and a couple sentimental items that didn't make my stomach turn. When Janet asked if I wanted to take the framed photos from the living room, I couldn't even look at them. He was in nearly every single one, smiling that smile I used to think was charming. Now all I could picture was that same face twisted with rage as his hands tightened around my throat. The wedding dress was gone, taken by the police as evidence, but they'd left the headboard. Who leaves a literal carved death threat sitting there? Janet's brother had to unbolt it from the bed frame. We drove it out to this empty lot and burned it. Watching those words, "You belong to me forever and always," turned to ash was the first time I felt even a flicker of peace since this nightmare began. My new place is small, empty, but safe. I've been sleeping on an air mattress because I can't bring myself to buy a real bed yet. My parents offered to stay longer, but I told them I needed to start rebuilding some sense of normalcy. That was a lie. Nothing feels normal anymore. I shower with the bathroom door open so I can see the hallway. I check under the bed every single night. I keep waiting for Owen to be found, waiting to feel safe again, waiting for the next awful thing to happen, because deep down, I know he's not done. Then came the grocery store incident. It was the first time I'd gone shopping alone since everything happened. I was halfway down the cereal aisle when it hit me, that creeping, electric feeling that someone's watching you. The tiny hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I turned slowly, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. But the aisle was empty, just a mom with a toddler picking out granola bars. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was anxiety, that therapy was supposed to be helping with exactly this kind of paranoia. I turned back toward my cart, reached for a box of Cheerios, and nearly screamed. There was a small red gift bag sitting in my cart, bright red with crisp white tissue out the top. It hadn't been there when I walked into the aisle. I know it hadn't. I backed away so fast I knocked into a display of cereal boxes. The mom stared at me like I was losing my mind. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I abandoned the cart right there and ran. Out of the aisle, out of the store, all the way to my car. I locked the doors and called Detective Hilda from behind the steering wheel, sobbing. She sent an officer to the store. They checked the security footage, but, of course, the cameras didn't cover that exact part of the aisle. Just my luck. The officer retrieved the bag and brought it to me later. Inside was a small jewelry box, and inside that, my engagement ring, the one I had returned months ago. Wrapped around it was a piece of paper, neatly folded. One word written in black ink. Soon. The police say they're taking it seriously, and I believe they are. But what can they actually do when they still can't find him? They've increased patrols around my new building, but every creak in the hallway still makes my blood run cold. At this point, I know the extra police patrols around my building are mostly for show. A formality. Security theater. Because if Owen could find me at a random grocery store, then he already knows where I live. That thought alone has kept me locked inside ever since. I haven't stepped foot outside in days. I order groceries and have them dropped off at the front desk downstairs. No direct contact. The curtains stay drawn. The lights stay off. Right now, I'm sitting in my closet with my laptop balanced on my knees, because it's the only place in this apartment where I feel remotely safe. It's dark, cramped, and the silence feels heavy enough to crush me. Detective Hilda called this morning. She said they found something new during another sweep of Owen's house. A journal. Dozens of pages filled with detailed plans. His own personal playbook for how he was going to reclaim me, as he called it. Different scenarios. Backup options in case I fought back. Some of the pages even had dried blood on them. They're testing to see if it's human. Hilda wouldn't tell me everything that was in it. Said too much of it would only traumatize me further. But I could tell from her voice that whatever she read disturbed her deeply. And this is a woman who spends her life dealing with the ugliest parts of humanity. I can't sleep. I can't eat. One of the few entries she did tell me about said, if I can't have her in this life, I'll take her to the next one. They're now treating my case as a credible threat of murder-suicide. That phrase alone makes my stomach turn. I don't know how to live like this anymore, constantly jumping at shadows, waiting for him to appear again. But but I can't let him win by completely taking over my life. I refuse to be another name in a tragic headline. Another woman killed by a man who couldn't handle losing control. It's been nearly a month since my last update, and my hands are shaking as I type this. I'm not even sure where to begin. I need to get it out, partly for myself, partly for everyone who's been following and checking in, and maybe for someone else who might recognize the warning signs before it's too late. After finding that gift bag in my shopping cart, I basically turned into a prisoner inside my own home. I worked remotely, ordered everything online. I only went out if it was absolutely necessary, and even then, only with someone by my side. Detective Hilda kept in touch, calling every few days with updates, but the answer was always the same. No sightings, no new leads. They were tracking his accounts, monitoring his family's homes, even scraping his old social media. Nothing. It was like he had stopped existing, except somehow he was still everywhere in my head. Then came the flowers. A bouquet of red roses delivered to my office, not my apartment. A card tucked inside read, "Missing you more each day." I hadn't been to the office in weeks, and no one there even had my new address. My boss called me, confused, asking if I wanted her to forward the flowers to my home. I nearly threw up when she described them. How the hell did he know where I worked? I called Hilda immediately. She sent someone to review the building's security footage. Turned out the flowers were delivered by a regular florist who had no clue who the sender was. The order had been paid for with a prepaid card, bought with cash at a convenience store 2 towns away. Another dead end. The breaking point came a week later. I was video chatting with my mom when an email notification popped up. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made my blood run cold. "Our wedding photos." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were dozens of images, photoshopped wedding pictures of me and Owen. My face pasted over another woman's, standing beside him in a white gown. In every single photo, my eyes were closed, my head slightly tilted, like a corpse posed for a wedding portrait. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. But the last image wasn't edited. It was real. It was me, asleep on my air mattress. The photo had been taken from outside my bedroom window. That morning. He knew where I was. I completely broke down, hyperventilating, shaking, screaming. My mom was still on the video call. She heard everything and called 911 from Indiana while I collapsed on the floor. When officers arrived, I couldn't even form words. I just shoved my phone at them, showing the email and the pictures. They searched the building and the surrounding area, but Owen was nowhere to be found. Hilda showed up an hour later. She told me they had already traced the email to a public library about 20 minutes away. They were pulling the surveillance footage. That was it for me. I couldn't stay there another second. I stuffed a few essentials into a bag, grabbed my laptop, and drove to a hotel. Paid in cash. Checked in under a fake name. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not Janet, not even my parents. Only Hilda knew. I was terrified Owen could somehow be monitoring their phones or emails. 3 days later, Hilda called again. They had identified Owen on the library security footage. He looked different, his head shaved, a beard grown out, but it was unmistakably him. Proof that he was still in the area. Proof that he was still watching. A formal arrest warrant went out that same day. Hilda promised me they would find him soon. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a faint sound outside my hotel room door. Not knocking, not footsteps. Scratching. Soft, rhythmic scratching, like fingernails dragging lightly across the wood. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Every muscle in my body went rigid as I strained to listen. The sound stopped, and then, a few seconds later, it started again. The scratching grew louder, more deliberate this time, like whoever was on the other side wanted me to know they were there. I moved slowly, barely daring to breathe, and reached for my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it as I texted Hilda, using the emergency number she'd given me. Then I grabbed the lamp off the bedside table, the heaviest thing within reach, and pressed my back against the wall next to the door. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure whoever stood outside could hear it. Then silence. The scratching stopped. For a second I thought maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. Then came a sound so faint I almost missed it. A whisper. "I know you're in there, babe. Just want to talk." Owen's voice. Every muscle in my body locked up. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle the sob that almost escaped. Tears streamed down my face. The doorknob turned slowly, but the deadbolt held. Then came a different sound. Metal scraping against metal. He was trying to pick the lock. His voice came again, soft but venomous. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We belong together. You know that. All this running away is just delaying the inevitable." My phone buzzed. A text from Hilda. "Stay quiet. Don't engage. Officers are on the way." Easy for her to say when I was the one trapped inside a room with a lunatic on the other side of the door. Suddenly, Owen's tone shifted. The whispering stopped. He started shouting, pounding on the door with both fists, screaming that he knew I was inside, that I couldn't hide, that he would always find me. I could barely stand, my entire body trembling as I gripped the lamp like a weapon. It felt like forever, though it was probably only minutes, before I heard the faint wail of sirens in the distance. Owen must have heard them too, because the pounding stopped. Then came the sound of footsteps. Fast ones, running down the hall. I stayed frozen until I heard several other sets of footsteps approaching, followed by a voice calling my name. Hilda's voice. Only then did I drop the lamp and collapse to the floor, numb, shaking, barely able to breathe. They missed him. By minutes. Security footage showed him bolting down the emergency stairwell and out a side exit just as the first patrol car pulled into the lot. But now they had him on camera. Fresh proof he was still in town, and evidence of him trying to break into my room. That was the turning point. The hunt was officially on. Hilda insisted I couldn't stay at the hotel anymore. It wasn't safe now that Owen had tracked me there. She suggested moving me to a safe house, but I was done running. I told her to use me as bait. If Owen was determined to find me, then we'd make it happen, on our terms. She didn't like the idea, but after consulting with her superiors, she agreed it might be the fastest way to catch him before he escalated further. The plan was simple, a sting operation using my apartment. I'd go back home and pretend everything was normal. Act like I thought the danger had passed. In reality, plainclothes officers would be stationed inside and throughout the building. The waiting was torture. 3 full days of pretending life was normal again, walking to the coffee shop every morning, stopping at the corner store, forcing small talk with neighbors. I wore a concealed panic button clipped to my waistband and slept, knowing armed officers were just a few doors away. On the 4th day, it happened. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to watch Netflix, trying to look relaxed even though I was seconds away from throwing up from sheer anxiety. Then I heard it, the faint sound of a doorknob turning. Testing. It was locked, but that wouldn't stop him. I pressed the panic button. Then came the unmistakable click of a key sliding into the lock. A key. He must have made a copy back when we were still together. My blood ran cold as the door swung open. There he was. For a split second, I almost didn't recognize him. The shaved head, the beard. He looked like a stranger wearing Owen's face. He was holding a duffel bag. I didn't want to know what was inside. He smiled. Miss me? Every rehearsed thing I'd planned to say vanished from my mind. I couldn't move. Couldn't even speak. He closed the door behind him, never breaking eye contact. He started talking, rambling about how hard I'd been to track down, how he always knew I'd come back to this place because people like me were creatures of habit. When I finally managed to speak, all I could ask was what he wanted. He laughed, that same cold, humorless laugh that used to send chills down my spine. He said he wanted his life back, the one I'd supposedly ruined when I threw away 5 years. He stepped closer. I forced myself not to retreat. Then his tone changed again, softer, almost tender. He said he'd realized over the past few weeks that I'd never come back willingly, that I was too stubborn, too proud. So he'd made other plans. He reached for the duffel bag. My stomach twisted. Where the hell were the officers? Why weren't they bursting in already? He unzipped the bag and started talking about how we were going to leave town, start fresh somewhere new, and if I wouldn't be his wife in this life, then we'd be together in the next one. Then he pulled out the gun. The room tilted. I thought I was going to faint. Just as he raised it, the bathroom door exploded open. "Drop it!" an officer yelled. Guns drawn, voices shouting over each other. Owen's expression snapped from calm to pure hatred. He spun toward me, screaming that I'd set him up, that I was a lying bitch. Everything happened at once. The lunge, the officers firing, the deafening echo of gunshots. I hit the floor and covered my head. When I finally looked up, Owen was down. He'd been shot in the shoulder and the leg. Not fatal, but enough to stop him. As they dragged him up, he spat at the floor and screamed that he'd find me again, that he always finds what's his. Those were the last words I ever heard from him. The aftermath has been complicated. Owen was charged with attempted murder, stalking, breaking and entering, and 6 other crimes. He's being held without bail while he waits for trial. The evidence against him is overwhelming. The journal, the photos, the emails, the footage, the gun. He's facing decades in prison. I should feel relieved. I should feel safe. But I don't. Not completely. The nightmares still come. I wake up convinced I've heard him outside. My therapist says that's normal. That trauma doesn't fade just because the danger has passed. I've since moved again. A new city this time. New job. New name. No social media. I cut ties with anyone who ever knew both me and Owen. It feels extreme, but it's the only way I can sleep through the night. The prosecutor warned me that Owen's been writing letters from jail, not to me directly, which would violate the restraining order, but to his parents and friends. In those letters, he talks about finishing what he started when he gets out. So here I am, writing this from my new apartment in my new city under my new name. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm starting over. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that you never really know someone. Not truly. The man I loved for 5 years, the man I planned to marry, was capable of a darkness I couldn't have imagined. So please, check in on your friends who just left relationships, especially the ones where their ex seemed too calm about the breakup. Trust your gut when something feels off. Document everything. Take every threat seriously, even the subtle ones. The red flags I ignored nearly got me killed. I don't know exactly what the future looks like, but for the first time in months I actually believe I have one. And Owen, wherever he ends up, will never be part of it again.